stick dirty. I've been through a lot, but I'm still flirty. Is everybody back up in the building? It's been a minute, tell me how you're healing. Cause I'm about to get into my feelings. How you feeling? How you feel right now? Oh, I've been so down and under pressure. I'm way too fine to be distressed, yeah. Oh, I'm not the girl I was or used to be. But I might be better. Turn up the music, turn down the lights. I got a feeling I'm gonna be alright, okay, alright. It's about damn time. Turn up the music, let's celebrate. I got a feeling I'm gonna be okay, alright. It's about damn time.
All right. Rashi, do you have a word? Happy New Year. Do you have a word that that describes your hope for 2025?
Ooh. Do you have a word that describes your hope for 2025?
I think my word is bold, like your lipstick.
I think my word for 2025 is patience.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've felt like I've needed to channel patience, I would say probably also in 2024.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely feeling the need to slow down and, take it all in and not be reactive.
Yeah.
From a place of, kind of reaction, but really a place of like strategy and proactive.
Yeah.
So I think my word would be patience.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you. And hello, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of 2025. I'm Daisy Hahn. I'm the founder of Embracing Equity, and it's such an honor to be able to kick off the new year with this webinar today. Before we dive in, I want to just take a moment to express my gratitude, whether you're with us, you've been with us since the beginning, or you're just joining us in this movement now. You are a vital part of the work that we do at Embracing Equity, and your commitment to equity and justice in education inspires us and the work we do together every day. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Rashi, someone who embodies that commitment. Embracing Equity's new CEO. Rashi is a passionate, visionary leader with a wealth of experience and an incredible drive to build on the foundation we've built together. I couldn't be more excited. It's truly a dream come true to have this moment, Rashi leading us into this next chapter. So today's conversation about Embracing Equity's next era, looking at our past, our present, and our future, we're going to reflect on where we've been, take stock of where we are, and dream big about where we're going. And we invite you to join us in this journey. Together, we'll explore the incredible work that we've accomplished, the challenges we faced, and the exciting opportunities ahead. This isn't just a look back or a look forward. It's an opportunity to deepen our collective resolve and turn hope into action. So I encourage you throughout the webinar and always to bring your ideas, your questions, and your voice to this conversation. And with that, let's dive in, Rashi. I'm excited to hear everything, your reflections from you, and what brought us to this moment.
Thank you, Daisy. We're going to talk about all of that. But before we start, I just kind of wanted to take a moment and honor and acknowledge you and the amazing work. And I know blood, sweat, and tears it's taken you to conceptualize Embracing Equity when you were at Harvard, bring it to fruition when you were at the Wildflower Foundation, and then create its own 501c3 nonprofit. And when I think back to our relationship and I think back to you, I see embracing equity in you, and I see you in embracing equity. And so I am really grateful for you for having started this organization, for having fundraised it, hired the founding team, built it to where it is now, so that we can actually have this webinar today where we can think about not just, how do we just survive, but how do we thrive as an organization. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for you for that.
Thank you so much. I love you so much. I appreciate it.
I love you too. I know this is like a love fest. I'm wondering actually, I know embracing equity starting it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And we'll talk about that journey. But I would love to understand from you a little bit, was there like a pivotal moment early on that maybe confirmed for you that we really needed this work and maybe shaped how you even thought about embracing equity, or what embracing equity was back then in your head?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some of you may have heard my origin story, which I worked on with Marshall Gans at the Kennedy School, looking at the story of me, of us, of now. And in that process, he kept asking me like, well, why do you care so much about equity? Why educational equity? You weren't born out of the womb passionate about educational equity. Like, something had to have happened to crystallize this value in your life. And through that process, I realized it started from that first day of school in kindergarten, going into my classroom, not speaking a lot of English, saying goodbye to my mom, and then being thrown in an environment where it's all English, mostly all white teacher. Yeah. And I was sobbing so hard, so uncomfortable, and afraid. And my teacher, a very kind, well-meaning educator, came up to me and, in a genuine attempt to comfort me and affirm me, started making these goofy faces, slanting her eyes, and saying, don't worry, my little China doll. And I know that the intention there was to try to genuinely support me, but in that moment, I felt more alienated, right? More afraid. And I looked for my mom desperately to rescue me out of this situation. And I found her staring at me from the window. So I locked eyes and I was like, okay, I'm going to scream so loud for you to come in. But when I actually went to scream, I saw that my mom was sobbing harder than I was, literally standing outside of a school, outside of a system that was never designed for her or her daughter's success. And that moment, it always stuck with me. And it's why I wanted to become an educator. I wanted to create a totally different educational model where children could bring their whole humanity, be loved and affirmed and cherished in that whole humanity, and not have to sacrifice their ethnic identity, not sacrifice who they are in order to be successful, right? They don't have to assimilate to be successful. And so now, in full circle, seeing that embracing equity, we've been working with over 10,000 participants now through our programming. Yeah. We've had such profound impact that really hit home for me when I dropped my own daughter off at school, and she went into the classroom with an educator who had graduated from Embracing Equity a few years ago. And I had a completely different experience from my mom. Alden didn't even look back. She was so joyful. The entire environment was prepared to honor every child's humanity. They were culturally competent. They had the awareness and the skills, right? That's the thing, is it is possible. They had the skills to truly create an inclusive, loving learning environment. And that's where I was like, wow, what we do at Embracing Equity, it matters. It has direct impact on the lives of children, their families, the educators who are teaching them and stewarding this next generation, like they deserve to have the tools and be equipped, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I felt like, oh, our mission is so valuable, and what we do really matters.
Oh my God, what a full circle moment though to come to, right? Like
Totally.
your own lived experience and now your child's lived experience. Well, you're standing outside the building a little bit, right? But
Yeah.
it's a very different building. It's a very different,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. Well, I'm also wondering then, I think like related to that, obviously you've mentioned, I would say probably the most significant milestone or achievement embracing equity could have, which is that we want our kids to go to the edge, to go to schools and classrooms that have been trained or have received training from embracing equity, right? We want embracing equity trained educators and assistants and principals and schools and corporations to be the places where our kiddos are thriving. So I can't even think of a more significant achievement or testament to our success. But I'm wondering, like, are there other like kind of milestones or achievements that you want to talk about when you think about embracing equity that you're like, I want to, this was a big one.
Oh yes, there are so many, but the one that really sticks out to me is when I was a public high school teacher. I was teaching in Hayward on the border of East Oakland, near the BART station where Oscar Grant was murdered. And so my students were obviously, that's their BART station to go to school. They were curious. They want to talk about systemic racism. They want to talk about how it implicates their lived experience, the history of systemic racism in the founding of America, right? And I was teaching American history. So I was like, of course we need to discuss this. And this is the place where students should be able to bring these questions, where we should be able to have honest dialogue, right? Make meaning and create activists, children who have the belief that they can make a difference in creating a more just society, where a situation like those things don't have to happen. And how do we create systems level changes to ensure that every human being is treated with dignity and respect? And when I was doing this curriculum that I had created, we did some field trips to Black Lives Matter protests in San Francisco, and it was very involved, driven by the students. One of three white students in my class, it was predominantly Black and brown students, said that white privilege doesn't exist. She didn't believe in it. And she told her mother, who was also the board chair of this school, and her mom asked the principal to essentially shut down this learning. And the principal told me I wasn't allowed to talk about Black Lives Matter or systemic racism or white privilege anymore in the classroom. And at that point, it was mid-school year. So educators know, like, that's a really difficult time to be stepping away from the classroom. But I thought that it was important for me and for my students to see that these values are something that, like, I can't just ignore
or turn on and off, right?
You can't
when it's convenient.
Right.
When it's convenient.
Or like not comfortable. It's not comfortable. So it's not interesting. So I ended up quitting mid-year. And then the milestone, because I was kind of like, man, I'm so disappointed because this is such a powerful school, really, really cool mission. But I ended up leaving mid-year. And then just a couple of years later, that school ended up signing up for our year-long leadership residency with Dr. Nicole Noel. And they did an intensive deep dive in an equity audit and looking at their own internal practices, looking at how they can continue to push and improve. And it showed me, like, despite your past, despite your mistakes that you've made, despite anything that's happened, if you're new to this, it's okay. You can start. Every day is a new day where you can continue to recommit to embracing equity and your own lifelong learning?
What an amazing accomplishment and achievement.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I think about embracing equity, obviously, as you said, right, we've had those organizational wins, like we've been able to hire people, grow our budget, whatever, right? Keep the lights on. But when I think about our most significant achievement, I know it's the personal transformation.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you know, how much money we're bringing in or how many schools we're touching necessarily. It's about the depth of the transformation we're having with every individual and every organization that we're working with. And now it's no longer a pie in the sky hope. We have proof points, we have data, we have testimonials, we have qualitative and quantitative data, we have an external evaluator report. I mean, I think that to me feels like the biggest achievement, which is like, I no longer have to scream from the rooftop and say, this works. We know what we're doing. We have externally validated it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes when we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and especially when we think about like training related to like equity and things like that, it feels very ephemeral, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's a soft skill, we can't measure it, we don't know if you're getting better at it, we don't know if it's improving our culture. That's not true.
Yeah.
You can measure all of those things and you can know if it's making a difference. And you talked about your school with the leadership residency. I mean, that's a program that literally does that, right? You can do an equity audit and literally track your progress. And I think that is a big achievement. Right? We're no longer talking about DEI as this ephemeral, you know, like a Toastmasters club you're supposed to meet in once a while so you can be a better public speaker. That's not it. Right. This is an integrated part of who you are.
Right.
And how you're approaching everything in the world.
Yes.
And being able to create that kind of transformation within people and within organizations.
Yeah.
And that sticks, you know, sustain change. I mean, I think whew, it gives me goosebumps just even talking about
that's
this.
The transformative work, right?
Yeah, that's the transformative work. Well, the other question I do have for you, as we're getting a little bit of this origin story and history of embracing equity, is I know that, especially the early days, but honestly, even now, our work in our organization is, you know, fraught with unexpected challenges, right?
Yes.
And so when you think back to yourself as a leader, what unexpected challenges did you face and how did they maybe shape your approach as to leadership and maybe also the organization's approach to equity?
That's an amazing question. The self-knowledge, the self-development is a bedrock to embracing equity. As a solopreneur, you know, the overdone strengths that I have learned through my experiences as a child of immigrants, as a parentified child, I use them in creating the org. So my overdone strengths are forceful, persistent, and persuasive. And so those are great skills for a founder entrepreneur, right? Because you have to be forceful, you have to be persistent, you can't take no. You have to continue, right? To be able to create something that doesn't exist and doesn't necessarily in this society, you know, this society
doesn't want it to exist. Exactly.
Right. So those skills were helpful at that early stage, at that time. After we, you know, obviously created the organization and I continued to use those overdone strengths, it was hurtful. It became hurtful. Like it wasn't the strength that I needed to exercise as a leader. And there are a lot of other strengths that I have that I wasn't even thinking about because my default was to be forceful, persistent, and persevering. And that actually was the challenge for me of recognizing, whoa, I have a choice. Like I can choose how I want to show up here. And I have to be much more aware and empathetic of how I'm going to impact the people that I'm working with based on the skills that I'm choosing to exercise here, right?
Yeah.
And being like forceful and urgent, everything is important and
Yeah.
high priority. That's not sustainable, and it's not going to lend itself to a collaborative team. So for
Yeah.
me, the challenge was going from that solopreneur founder, forceful, persistent, persuasive mindset to the more expansive, like coalition building. We're a team. We are thinking about sustainability. We are thinking
Yeah.
about long-term growth,
Yeah.
long-term impact. But that was a big self work.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, me too. My top overdone strength is self-confident, which when overdone is arrogance. And, as you can imagine, as a leader, if your team thinks you're arrogant, that's not
Yeah.
exactly great, right? And so that's really where, honestly, our own coaching has helped us. I know some of you all are in the audience are also doing Embracing Equities, equity-centered coaching. But what Daisy talked about in terms of like understanding your strengths, but also understanding maybe when you default to them unintentionally or unknowingly, right? And you're not being strategic. You're not strategically saying, oh, I need to be persuasive in this, I need to be forceful in this opportunity or environment, so let me do that. But instead, when you're defaulting to that, and for me, I mean, some of mine are, one of mine is arrogance, but another one of mine is modest. So I am not modest in a healthy way, but I'm just self-effacing. Right? Because I think as a brown woman, I've realized I can't be too arrogant. It's very off-putting. So let me make some self-deprecating, self-effacing comments so I'm more palatable, right? Well, that was not an insight I had about myself until I did coaching with EE, right? And so I would say like that was a challenge. Yes, definitely an unexpected challenge. And I feel like most of my unexpected challenges I found are within me.
Yeah.
They catch you off guard. But it helped me realize like, oh, no, I don't have to be my default. Right? Like we're human beings and we can grow and change. And even if we're not kiddos and adults, 40-year-old women, we can still grow and change, right? And I think that was both an unexpected challenge, but also such a gift.
Such a gift.
Such a gift, right? And to be able to now, I made my husband do the same thing. So I also know his strengths and overdone strengths. Because we ground our coaching in that, right? And we ground our coaching in our motivations and everything. And I feel like just understanding that about myself has made me actually more empathetic and more able to see that and understand other people. So sometimes now within our team, when somebody else, I mean, you've seen me do this, when somebody else is kind of unintentionally defaulting to their overdone strengths, right? I don't have to get triggered and be like, no. I can be like, oh, hey, maybe you're leaning into your overdone strengths. Like, is this what you want to be doing? And so I think it's also given us language.
Totally. Absolutely. Hold each other accountable.
Yeah. And to do that transformative work that cannot really be done alone without any feedback from anybody else.
Right. Exactly.
You have to have that mirror that either you're holding up to yourself or somebody else is helping you hold up to you.
The other condition is having a shame-free learning culture, right? So within Embracing Equity, creating a culture of lifelong learning and truly embracing failure as learning, right? Because we already accept the premise that we will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And people told me that all the time when I was starting Embracing Equities, like, well, what if you mess up this? What if this? And I'm like, oh, I will. I will mess it up. It will get messed up.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn. That's how we apply the learning is by making those mistakes, learning from them, applying the lessons, not getting stuck in shame.
Yeah.
But focused on growth, learning. We are human. We deserve to be able to make mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's bringing me to another question that I think makes sense of this journey in our EE story is, when you first started to when you think about EE now, how would you say has the vision evolved? And also, how have you been able to, how is Embracing Equity and you as at the helm been able to stay grounded in the vision and the mission during times of adversity?
Oh, wow. Great. Truly, this transition it was my vision from the inception of Embracing Equity. My hopes and dreams were that this organization and this work would live beyond me. I did not want the organization to be stuck in the cult of my personality. I'm human. I fuck up all the time. I don't want it to be based on me burning out or making a mistake, whatever.
Yeah.
I wanted us to build a sustainable, transformative organization that could continue the work despite what will be guaranteed and adversity, right? And so for this transition to happen and for you to be the new CEO is truly my dream come true, for what I was envisioning at the start of founding Embracing Equity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the team. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah.
And you know what I'll say is, I think what you have also built in Embracing Equity is an organization very, very grounded in our values.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when I think about, my 5 years with EE, and even as I think about my future with EE, I think what gives me hope and some solace is that no matter how crazy the world becomes, my values are not going to change.
Totally.
Integrity is going to continue to be a value for me and for Embracing Equity. That's not going to change. Love is a core value for us. That's not going to change. And I think like that has been the North Star that I think all of us at Embracing Equity, the team, the board, our partners, we're all really trying to be grounded in our values so that we're walking our talk even during times of adversity, and not just when it is convenient or comfortable or easy, trendy. Right? Or trendy. Exactly.
Well, Rashi has you have the most integrity of anybody I know. So whenever I would like make a decision that was kind of questionable, like I'm like, I don't know if this is really 100%. Rashi would be the last person I go to for advice, because I know you're going to say don't do it. Like I already know what your answer is going to be. So I'm like, okay, let me ask everybody else. Everybody says, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Rationalize that. And then I go to Rashi, she's like, no. But I that's what I admire about you, and really gives me confidence in this next era as well, Rashi, is, you have so much integrity. You're not going to compromise on your values, period. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that statement fully. And yeah. I mean, this is where I feel like I might make mistakes and accidentally compromise our values, but I want that feedback and I want to learn from those mistakes, right? Like at the end of the day, I think like we as humans and we as organizations, exactly like you're saying, we're not chasing perfectionism, right? So we're not saying Embracing Equity is perfect and we do everything perfectly, but
no.
And we're not trying to chase perfectionism either, but we are trying to chase love and integrity and all of the values that we hold dear to our work and frankly, our lives.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think everybody in Embracing Equity is trying, successfully or unsuccessfully, to live their life by the same core values that we are trying to live within our organization. And I think that is amazing.
Yeah. Well, Rashi, can we pivot a little bit to the present moment?
Oh, sure.
As we're reflecting on the present, what do you see is the organization's greatest strengths today?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of alluded to this a little bit already. Daisy, you and our current team have laid such an incredible base of support. And when you think about a house, right? I think where we are now is we already have the foundation, we already have like the rooms and everything. And where we are now is I need to just fill the house. right? We need to get people to live in it, take care of it, own it, co-own it, right? And that's where I feel like we are with embracing equity. Like we're no longer, when you first started, you're worried about like, where's the bathroom? How do we keep the lights on? How do I get my first hire? Like all these early stage things that in some ways, frankly, are insurmountable. And that's why so many organizations don't even make it to this. Because we're 7, 8 years old now. We don't, very few organizations make it to that mark, right?
Yeah.
But we have. And so now I feel like the time is not, I don't need to prove to people that our stuff works. We know it works. We have the programming. We've created the programming. We have the training. We have all of that. And now I feel like where I am and where I feel embracing equity is we need to find the coalition of the willing.
Yes.
Right? We want to link arms with our community to not just keep all this amazing, good content and transformative learning within us and our team, but to spread it as far and wide as possible. So have both breadth of transformation and also depth of transformation, right? So that's kind of what is exciting for me in this new stage where I'm like, we have these amazing things, we have these amazing programs and services and team members and all the tools. And now it's not just me and you saying that. Yeah, the structure, everything, right? We can actually take care of our partners from beginning to end and not just leave you at the end high and dry, but figure out what does sustainable solutions look like for you and how do we create bespoke sustainable solutions for you individually and organizationally, right? And so now I feel like we have the stuff, we need to get it out, right? Okay. We need to figure out who are the people that are wanting some of the same work that we're doing, where are the organizations that are trying to do this alone, like, I think that's the big thing. I remember when I was working in previous organizations where I was like the DEI person that like I had to figure out the trainings and I had to figure out the whatevers, right? I felt so alone. And I was like Googling and researching and all that stuff. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. We exist. We have research-backed programs, right?
Exactly.
And so I think that's where I am now is how do we get the loudspeaker wider and longer? And how do we find those people that are trying to do this work in isolation and silos? I live in Texas. I know there are silos in my even community, local community, that would want this, but they don't have the wherewithal because they don't have the money or they don't have the supportive structures, right? And so I think the new foray for EE is the matchmaking of people and organizations that are wanting this work, right? That agree that racism exists, that inequities exist. We're not living in some post-racial utopia, right? But then what comes next? And we can help you figure out what comes next. We can, all of that. And so I think that's what's exciting. We're no longer worried about the recipe. We're going to do the actual baking.
Right. And eat.
Exactly.
Well, do you have any specific stories or examples of that, embracing equity impact in action?
I mean, you already spoke to two, and we have numerous like testimonials and stuff like that on our webpage, but I'll speak to my own personal transformation. So I actually started, I got connected to Embracing Equity because they did a training. Embracing Equity did a training at my last job as just like a DEI training. It was in person, 5 days. And then Daisy and I, we ended up getting thrown together in these, we were both our organizations were funded by some of the same philanthropic organizations. So we got thrown together at a few of these communities of practice. And and then after that, I did some more training with Embracing Equity individually. And all of that, like between the in-person and meeting Daisy and her early startup journey and actually, being a participant in the content and curriculum.
Totally.
It was, I don't know, it was like speaking a different language, right? It was like, I didn't even know what I didn't know. It was actionable. It wasn't like, oh, I was reading a book and now I'm like, how do I apply this in my real life? Like, these are concepts, but I don't know how to move from, theory, intellect to practice. It transformed me in ways I didn't even know I could be transformed. I mean, think about it. I'm here, 5 years, 6 years, how many years later, 7 years later, I think. literally leading the organization. And I started as a participant. And I started as a participant in a public training cohort.
Yeah.
Right. One of my EE buddy, actually, who got paired with me randomly, she was a teacher in Vermont. Her name is Marianne Hunkin. She is now part of the Embracing Equity team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think like that is the success. I am the success story.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I am the success story for E. And I don't know what other story I could even tell you for somebody else's success. And I am the walking, talking billboard. And that's why I feel like I feel so confident in in the quality of our work, in the quality of our services and the offerings and the programs, that I feel emboldened and empowered to be out there and saying, you're missing out if you're not actually tapping us for help.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why? It's like having access to this like amazing tool that you're just letting sit on the shelf.
A win-win-win tool.
Yeah, exactly. That you're just letting like, disappear sit on the shelf, right? And so I think that's what I feel like Embracing Equity has given to me. That's what success for Embracing Equity has looked for me individually. And that's what I hope to do for more people and more organizations, and what Embracing Equity hopes to do for more people and more organizations in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Rashi. And I think the tagline that we have on our website, right, is embracing equity, not chequity, because that really communicates the ethos of who we are. Philosophy is not a compulsory compliance exercise of I have to do a DEI training and just get it done, get it out of the way so I could say I did it. That is not what we do. That is not transformative. That is not sustainable. It has to be truly integrated into the life of the organization and how it operates day to day. So I'm wondering, looking at our present infrastructure, which you've had a huge hand in shaping, can you share how internally within Embracing Equity, how we have operationalized some of our, policies and practices to reflect that equity, not chequity philosophy?
Oh, yes. And honestly, this could be its own hour-long webinar. With our full team. So you don't just have to get my perspective, right? As like in like the leadership position, but you can actually talk to everybody on our team and get their opinions as well. But I think from the ground up, every decision that we've made, including policies, employee handbooks, our performance conversation framework, how we manage our board, all of that, again, is grounded in our values and grounded in how do we dismantle and disrupt white supremacy culture? How do we dismantle and disrupt dominant culture, oppressive cultural, patterns and characteristics that we just do because we don't even realize, right?
The default.
And we have built a team where everybody is doing that kind of questioning and analysis at every step, right? Every decision. So it's not like we're doing 9 to 5 is our day job and then 5 to 6 we do equity work, right? Everything is equity work. So for example, when we do our all team meeting, right? Once a month, we have a full all team meeting. Every single meeting we end where everybody out loud, with me there, with Daisy there, with everybody there, and all of us too, have to share one mistake we made over the last month, right? Because it's a monthly meeting, and one appreciation, right? And in the beginning, when people are new, the mistakes are like, oh, I had a typo in this email that got sent out. And that's okay. Nobody's judging the caliber of your mistake, the gravitas of it, the impact of it. That's not the point. The point is we are all making mistakes. Some are going to be big, some are going to be small. The muscle we want to build is not to not make mistakes, but to actually figure out when that happens, how do I actually deal with that in a learning way and not just, oh man, I messed up and now I'm going to go in a shame spiral, right? And so by making this a habit every month, for example, everybody in our team shares mistakes. And sometimes we now share big mistakes that have impact, financial and resources and otherwise, but that's life. right? That's life. And pretending like people don't make mistakes is not going to be helpful. So that's a very like tangible example of both a policy, but also like an activity that we do as a team, right? Where everybody is now feeling co-ownership on this culture of making mistakes. It's not just Rashi and Daisy saying make mistakes, it's okay, right? But it's everybody realizing, no, I can make mistakes. And one of the things, Daisy, that I think you have done really well in your leadership at Embracing Equity is to give the peek behind the curtain of those mistakes and the shame spirals and the aftermath, right? And I think that's actually humanizing to understand that, hey, we have people, including our CEO, who make big mistakes and then they have to deal with it, right? And so I can also do that. I can also make a mistake, try something, and then I'll deal with it. Yeah. And I think it's a big testament to you and how much you've also modeled for me and for the team that we can make mistakes. We can create a time and a space. Even when we react to mistakes poorly, right? We can still go back and have corrective conversations and restorative conversations and restorative actions. Yeah. And I think that's a win.
That's a huge win. Absolutely. Yeah. That really hit home for me when I became a mother and I realized that that voice, which my therapist and I have called Hitler, in my head, that berates me when I make even the tiniest mistake. Yeah. And I can't, I have a hard time to turn it off, or even just like dampen the impact. But that self-shaming, when I react to other people's mistakes, in that same vein, or with that same kind of feel to it, that heat to it, it only severs trust. It only severs the vulnerability, and it becomes the voice that my child is going to have in their head. And that where I realized, I was like, whoa, the consequences of this are so catastrophic, right? Yeah. If I can't heal my own wounds that have caused me to be so harsh on myself. Yeah. And create a culture of belonging where we can be humans first, right? Then this work is not really, it doesn't have the integrity then of practicing our values, right? Yeah. So I really appreciate that acknowledgement, and I received that. Thank you, Rashi. I'm trying very hard.
I mean, and we can see it, right? And it's appreciated. And I think for me, what is also motivating is that I see you doing it. I see that it's hard, right? But I see the impact it has on our relationship and how much better our relationship for having done that deep hard work, right? And so that's motivating for me as well as the other person in the relationship with you to also do the same sort of deep hard work, to meet you where you're at. Yes. Or try to, at least.
Well, and to tie it back to your word for 2025, a lot of patience. A lot of patience, a lot of grace. Yeah. So I appreciate you. Yeah. And I'm curious, Rashi, as you step into this new role, we talked about your intention, right, for 2025. What would success look like for Embracing Equity at the end of 2025?
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to community, right? I think what for me success would look like is less about the numbers, like, oh, this many people and this many schools and all. I mean, those matter. Of course, that matters. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But true, genuine success, I think, is for me, two things. Is when folks that are aligned with our values, with our, belief system, and that inequities do exist and we need to do something to shift how our world is today. I hope that those folks can find us easily, that Embracing Equity as a name and as an entity becomes ubiquitous for support and thought partnership when it comes to DEI work. Yeah. That's really what I want. I want our community to know us. I want them to know how to link arms with us. I want them to, the easiest way to do this is literally to sign up for a 30-minute meeting with me, and I'll help you create the strategy, right? Very few nonprofit organizations will put their CEO up for a strategy session, but I am, and I'm willing, right? And so I think success for me is grace and sharing, right?
Okay.
Being open with our knowledge, being open with our community. And I think success is for the community to be open with us as well, right? This is a mutual partnership. And so I think that's what it would look like. My hope and desire is that anybody that is seeing this webinar, that is in the chat, if you're watching this afterwards on video, just sign up for a 30-minute strategy session with me. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
It's free, right? And maybe it will spark something in you, not necessarily to do work with embracing equity necessarily even, but what is this work? What is the purpose for you in this equity and inclusion work, right? What is your role in it, and what can you do? And we all can do something within our spheres of control.
Absolutely.
All of us.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
So that I think is success. That everybody can see an entry point and can see a place for themselves within embracing equity and access it.
Yes. Well, and we are also open to, maybe we can drop it in the chat. We have a open survey that you can even anonymously submit your questions, your equity dilemmas, challenges you're experiencing. You can share that with us, and we want to support you, right? You're not alone. So in any way, if you don't want to do a in-person, like a Zoom meeting or anything, you could just do an anonymous entry into the survey. You can email us, right? There are so many different ways to get in touch. And I guess I'm wondering, Rashi, then, given this vision for the outcome of 2025, what are the key priorities or initiatives that you believe will drive the greatest change to achieve that outcome?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are two things that are kind of differentiators for embracing equity, right? And so the first thing is that everything we do, whether it's with the individual or whether it's with the organization, we're doing it through our ecosystem approach, right? And I think that is honestly what has an unwavering fidelity to the ecosystem approach, and really integrating that in everything we do, I think is what has gotten us to our success and to sustained transformation.
Can you talk a little bit about that ecosystem?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know our ecosystem approach, essentially, right, we know that to both dismantle inequities and also to build a more liberated, better future, right? So not just break what we have,
right,
construct something, build something better, we need to do work at 3 levels. Okay. So the first is individual learning. We have to, of course, learn, right? That's knowledge, practices, understanding our own biases and, implicit and explicit and beliefs and all of those things, right? That's the individual learning part. But equity work cannot be done in a corner by yourself. You have to link arms with community. So the second piece is interpersonal actions. Right? How do I foster a culture of belonging wherever I am within my sphere, right? How do I link arms with the people around me that I have access to amplify and complement this work? And then last, but of course not the least, institutional transformation, right? So it's not enough that people are learning and growing and linking arms with each other, because what happens when those people leave? Right? Nobody stays in organizations and schools and buildings permanently. So what we need to also be thinking about is how are we institutionalizing not just the breaking down, but the building of the new, right? If your hiring policy was problematic and inequitable, fine, you get rid of that. But how are you institutionalizing a new way of hiring that is more equitable, that is more liberatory, that is better, right? And so that's our ecosystem approach. Everything we do, we do with an integrated individual learning, interpersonal actions, and institutional transformation, right? And then the second kind of key differentiator for embracing equity is that we don't have that checkwoody approach, right? Instead, we have like a coaching approach to all of our work, not even the consulting one where you kind of parachute in and leave. The coaching approach and methodology is grounded in the belief and the knowledge that everybody brings to the table prior knowledge that is helpful and valid, and everybody has, this is the Montessori approach, right? Everybody has within themselves all the tools they need, and we're just really the facilitators and the guide to help you find the tools, sharpen the tools, figure out which tool to use when, right? All of those things. So it's something that everybody could do. It's achievable by everybody and everyone, right? And so I think like both of those things, the coaching methodology about how we kind of implement the work, but also the work being grounded in the kind of ecosystem approach, I think both of those things are really what is going to continue to set Embracing Equity apart, and is what is going to continue to help our partners do the work and find the intrinsic internal motivation.
Yeah.
Right? And not having to be our partner forever, because that's not our goal.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's really, you know, the kind of focus, I would say, of EE that is the core differentiator and also the reason we're successful.
Right. Well, do you have any advice, like how can educators, leaders, and advocates take actionable steps to embrace equity in their own spaces right now?
Well, so the first thing you could do is literally sign up for a strategy session so I can help you and have a more nuanced conversation about what your context is, what your role is, what your sphere of control is, so that we can figure out, you know, what it is that you can do and want to do, right? So that I would say is the first step. But I think the second step, again, is community. You cannot, in my opinion, and I would say not just my opinion, but in my experience,
right?
Equity and inclusion work, we know, is grueling, is draining, is all of those things, right? And often can be isolating. As you know, as the lone DEI person in previous jobs, I know what that feels like, and it doesn't have to feel like that.
It can be joyful. That's what people always say.
It can be joyful.
So they're like,
so even
this was fun.
Exactly. So even if it's not me, like find a buddy, find a colleague, find somebody that you can lean on for support, but also for accountability.
Yeah.
Because I think the loneliness is going to kill us as a country. Yeah. Right. And so I think when we're talking about doing like social justice work or racial justice work or any kind of, I mean, as somebody that used to be an attorney in a previous life, the legal system is isolating as well, right? So any kind of justice work is isolating. And as a leader that is doing this day in and day out as my 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 or whatever job, you cannot do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
You have to have people. So if not embracing equity, find people within your communities, within your organizations, within wherever you are to link arms with and figure out what is the next step, right? Yeah. And you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it perfectly. And you don't have to not make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Yeah. So part of the other work I would say for leaders doing this work is starting to build comfort with discomfort.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, and we talk about this, of course, you know, in embracing equity so much in our trainings and everything. And where we say the goal is never to get to a place where you feel comfortable having race conversations. The goal is to get to a place where when you feel the discomfort, you're not shutting down. You're figuring out how to keep going. Right?
Exactly.
Because you're going to feel it. It's inevitable.
Yeah. And change doesn't happen in isolation. No. So having a community, and that's, I think, one of the hallmarks of the leadership residency is that community of other leaders. It's not just yourself. It's you and your leadership team, up to 3 people, coming together with other leaders who are in a very similar context to you. Now you have a coalition, right? Now you all can really partner with each other around your shared values, around your shared challenges, and then support each other through it. Yeah. Right. So it keeps the energy moving in a really healthy, positive direction.
Well, and I think related to that, I think that's also why our coaching is so successful, right? Because we get, sometimes you're a leader or you're a person within an organization that you don't really have the decision-making power to maybe do the leadership residency, or maybe you don't have the 3 people or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is where coaching comes in.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you don't need anybody. You can sign up for 5 coaching sessions yourself. And honestly, coaching was transformative for me.
Oh, I'm still doing coaching.
Yeah, me too. I'm in therapy. I'm in coaching. I'm on all of that. Agreed.
Yeah.
100%. And I think coaching made me realize that, oh, this can be so easy. I can just meet you when I'm available this week because I have an issue, or I can schedule these ongoing weekly check-ins because I'm applying for a new job and I need help or whatever, right?
Right.
And so I think like there are lots of ways, there's specific initiatives. Of course, we have coaching with Embracing Equity, we have leadership residency, we have our training programs that we create bespoke for people. So there's a lot of different initiatives that we have, but I think at the end of the day, it's finding that internal motivation to take that first step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's to like sign up for the call or, link onto that buddy and meet up or whatever it is, like take the first step.
Yeah.
Because as somebody that is overconfident in self-confidence, confidence comes not before you do it, but after you do it.
Right.
So once you do the thing, you will build the confidence.
Absolutely.
To be able to keep going.
Yeah.
So that I would say is my advice to anybody out there is just take the first step, reach out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be your, sorry.
And I think we all deserve that. We all deserve to belong to a community that is rooted in our shared values for equity and justice.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is for me, like combating my own obstacles to do it. It took a funder actually saying you may not use this money for anything else other than your own coaching to actually start coaching. And then once I did it, I was like, are you kidding me? This thing existed. I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like that kind of aha moment of like, yeah, actually I do deserve this. And there is support out there, you know?
And we don't need to be hyper independent.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
What do we gain by doing everything alone?
Yeah. A lot of it for me was rooted in like that American maverick value of like, yeah, you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself kind of thing. But that's such a myth. That is such a myth.
No, it takes a village, dude.
Everything worth doing, it takes a village. It takes a team.
Yeah.
So I guess to close out this webinar, as we're coming to the final minutes, Rashi, and looking to the future, what are your hopes and dreams for our Embracing Equity community?
I hope that my Embracing Equity community and our Embracing Equity community knows that they're loved. And I hope they know that they're not alone. And I hope they know whenever they find the courage within themselves to take whatever that first step is, that every single person on the EE team is going to be waiting for them with bated breath. That's what I want. And I want to feel that in my own body as part of the EE community. I want to feel held.
Yeah.
In that same way by you, by our team. And I want all of our community members to feel held.
Wow.
By EE.
I love that. What a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much, Rashi. I appreciate you and love you so much.
I appreciate you and love you too. What is your hope for us as you embark on new adventures?
I think the idea of being loved when it's inconvenient is a huge hope for me to realize in myself, and also something I have felt by the team and the community at Embracing Equity. So right now we're obviously experiencing a lot of anti-DEI rhetoric, some really concerning battles ahead. And so to know, like, even when it's not trending and it's inconvenient, our values for diversity, equity, inclusion are steadfast and will never change. we're going to always continue to embrace equity in our daily lives. And not only because we know it's the right thing to do, it's not just like a morality thing. Like we feel the impact of what embracing equity does in our bodies, in our lives.
Yeah.
So it's not even an option to go in another way.
Yeah.
Right? It's like this is how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
And I'm grateful for you for creating Embracing Equity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for stewarding it into the future.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, to you and to the EE community.
And thank you to all of you.
Yeah, thank you to all of you watching in this video or joining us on this webinar. You are the EE community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you. All right. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.